Hello friends, welcome to Learn Java series, and in this series we are learning about Java threading. In the last video we created a thread by implementing the runnable interface and overriding the run method. We can also create thread using the thread class. So you can create your own class that extends from the thread class. Then in the class we can override the run method. So the thread class as well as runnable interface are from java.lang package. Previously we used runnable interface, right? The thread class implements runnable interface. This is capital T. The thread class implements runnable interface, and hence we no need to implement it. So if you derive a class from thread class, since the thread class already implements the runnable interface, we no need to implement the runnable interface. We in the sense the derived class. The extended class should override the run method. So once you derive the class from thread class, in the extended class we can override the run method. Why? Because the base implements the runnable interface, and since you are overriding the run method, whoever is using your thread class, they will get the overridden version of the run. The method will run on a separate thread, that means the run method. So if you see the thread class, which is from java.lang package, right? So the thread class also implements the runnable interface. So this is a framework class. It already implements runnable. So when you define your own class called myThread, and if you derive that from java.lang.Thread, then you can provide your version of run method. So the run method will run in a separate thread, say T1, right? Note the run method itself in a threaded class. So since here it is a thread and the method is in the threaded class itself, since we derived our class from the thread. So here if you see, we are creating a new class called ex02 countryan, which extends from thread class. Then in the constructor we are receiving the name and we are giving that to the super in the sense we are calling the base class constructor. Base class constructor means a thread class constructor. So when you create a thread with a string constructor, the string will set the name for the thread. After setting name for the thread, we are starting it. So here if you see, after defining the constructor, we are overriding the run method here, and the run method runs for 10 times, 1 to 9. That means 9 times. And inside we are getting the name using the get name. Remember, our counter is actually the thread, and when you make a call to get name, this will return the name of the thread, and then we are printing the counter here, right? And we are doing a sleep of 250 milliseconds. So here if you see, we are making a run here and in the void main. So this will be in the thread context, right? The thread will print message, so it prints the thread name, then the counter. And in the main, we are stating that main thread starts, and towards the end we are stating main thread quits. Here we have one more for loop. So if you look at here, this for loop runs under main thread context. Right. New ex02 counter child of I. And if you see here, we are creating our thread instance inside this loop. The loop will run for 9 times. That means here we are creating 9 threads. This is the constructor, right? In the constructor itself, we are setting the name for this thread and we are starting the thread here. And the thread will run the run method, overwritten run method, right? So the main thread will run or loop 9 times, and in each time it will make a call to child thread, and there will be 9 child thread which is spanned by the main thread. Here if you see, the main thread starts here. So this is the main thread, right? Main thread starts here. Let's state that it runs and ends here, right? So when it is running in the flow itself, so this is keep on looping and also prints the message. This is the message, right, for main thread. Let's state that A1. So periodically it is printing that message A1, right? So it will print that 9 times. So when the main thread is running, the time it will span our thread instance. So there will be a thread. Let's state that thread 1, and the thread 1 starts, right? It will run, and after printing, so this is the thread context, and this one is the main thread context. Main thread is responsible for launching each thread. So there will be 1 to 9 threads. So this is thread 1. It will start and end after some time, and during that period it will print some numbers 1 to 9. So the same way, main thread starts when it is looping through it. On each loop it will start a thread, right? And the thread starts, performs counting, and ends, right? Likewise, there will be 9 thread, right? Let's state this is thread 9. Starts, performs counting, and ends here. And thread 8 ends here after counting 9, right? And if you look at the time frame here, main thread ended here. Even though main thread ends, since it started other threads, those also will run. So you may be seeing in your console window, even after main thread quits, because we have a message main thread starts, main thread quits, right? Even after seeing the message main thread quits, you will be seeing a message dedicated from the thread. That means this is the message from thread, right? It will print the thread name and performs the counter. And thread name, if you see how we are naming, child 1, child 2, child 3, likewise we are naming the thread. Alright, now let's go to the demo. So in our previous video we created one example. Now we will go ahead with the next example. Here we are naming it as ex02 counter and the package is len java thread, and we are creating a new class here. Alright, in the constructor we will set the name so our class is extending from the thread, and here we are calling the superclass constructor, that means a thread class constructor, and we are giving a name for the constructor is taking the string parameter and we are calling super with that incoming parameter. So this will set name for the thread. After that, in the constructor itself we are starting the thread. Right, previously we have a class which implements runnable interface, and inside the class itself we had thread instance, and we made call to thread.start. Here, since our class itself a thread because it extends from thread, we are directly making call to the start method. So the start method will expect a run method. So we will provide our version of run so that the start method will run the overridden version of our run method. So here we have run method override public void run, and we are starting a for loop that runs for 1 to 9 times, and the thread prints a message. This dot get name, whatever we are passing here, that is set as a thread name. That thread name here we are retrieving, and we are printing the counter variable. The thread sleeps for 250 millisecond, and after that it goes to the next loop and prints. So that's what our thread is doing. So the thread is simply printing for loop counter. Alright, we will make use of our previous main entry. We will remove all this code and here main starts, main ends, all these stuffs are already explained in the slide. Here also we have one for loop. Our thread contains one for loop, and the main thread also is having one for loop. And in the for loop it is printing two messages. One is main thread and it is running its own counter. Then we are creating a child thread using our instance. This is actually a thread instance, right, which extends from thread. So here, once we create a new instance of our ex02 counter, see here we are passing the name for the thread. It goes here and sets that whatever we are passing here as a thread name, and we are retrieving that in the threads run method and printing some message. So as explained in the slide, there will be there will be 10 thread. One is the main thread, and the main thread keep on running, and it runs for 9 times, and in each iteration it will span one thread, and each thread instance will run for 10 times. That means it has its own loop, right? So it will run for 9 times 1 to 9 and print the number. So since main is starting 9 thread, all 9 thread will run in parallel. We will see that in action now. We will build the code here. Now we will run it. Alright, all thread finished. Let's examine the output. If you see here, main thread starts. Main thread is printing message 0 1, and in the meantime, if you see, child thread started, because during this counter itself, child thread is created and it starts running. Before it had a chance to print its message, main thread gone to its second loop and it started a second thread, child thread also. And you can see child thread is printing its message by the time main thread comes to the third loop, right? And here you can see now child 1, child 0 is printing its message along with main thread. So at this moment you can see there are 3 threads fighting for the console and printing their message. And when it progresses, you can see there are more thread in picture. Here it is stating main thread 4, right? You can see 0 1 2 3, and when you come down, main thread 7, and if you see 6 5 is going on here. So what happened to 1 and 2? Because child 1 is ended here, because it is printing the count of 9, right? After this you won't see child 1, right? And child 2 is at 8, here child 2 is 9, so you won't see child 2 also. So likewise you can see the main thread, it is going on its counter and it is spanning the child thread, and child thread also running in parallel, and you can see child 3 also came to an end at this stage. So after this point you won't see child 0 1 2, you will be seeing 4 5 6, all those stuff. And here main thread is at the final loop and the main thread quits. Once main thread quits, it will not end the program. And if you see here, this is the main entry, right? Main thread quits. That means it is coming out of the void, public static void main. But whatever it started, that still runs. That means here if you see child 9 is running, it's just started. Before main quits, child 9 is started, right? So child 8 is ended, and you can see child 9 is keep on running even though main quits, right? All right, here anyhow we created a thread by extending the thread class, and we did a parallel execution this time using the extended thread class. That's all here in this video. Thank you for watching. Bye.